When I decided to rent an Airbnb for my business trip, I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. A change of scenery, maybe some peace and quiet after long days of meetings, that's all I was looking for. As I drove through the quaint little town, the air seemed thick with the kind of silence that only exists in places far removed from the chaos of city life. I had chosen a Victorian-style house on the outskirts of town, a charming relic of a bygone era that stood alone at the end of a secluded street. When I arrived, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the front yard, where a lone swing swayed gently, moved by a breeze I couldn't feel. Margaret, the host, greeted me at the door. She was a woman in her late 50s with eyes that seemed to hold secrets, like an old book that no one dared to open. Her smile was polite, but there was something off about it. A stiffness in her demeanor, perhaps, or maybe the way her eyes darted nervously as she spoke. "Welcome," she said, her voice a little too cheerful. "I hope you find everything to your liking. It's a lovely place, especially if you enjoy the quiet." I nodded, trying to match her enthusiasm, though I couldn't shake the feeling that her words held a weight I didn't quite understand. As she showed me around, I took in the house's grandeur: high ceilings, antique furniture, and walls adorned with portraits of solemn-faced ancestors. Each room had a story to tell, whispered through the creaks of the wooden floors. We stopped at the door to the basement. "Just one thing," she added, her smile faltering for the briefest moment. "Please don't lock the basement door. It has a tendency to stick if you do." Her request struck me as odd, but I shrugged it off, attributing it to the quirks of an old house. Little did I know, that door would soon become the centerpiece of my nightmare. After settling into my room, I decided to rest a bit before dinner. The bed was comfortable, but as I lay there, the shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching across the walls in unnatural ways. The house groaned and creaked with the settling of age, each sound an unspoken warning. Later that evening, after an uneventful dinner, I retired to my room, hoping for a good night's sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the soft hum of the night. But as midnight approached, a series of strange noises began to filter through the stillness. At first it was subtle, the sound of footsteps echoing from somewhere below, slow and deliberate, like someone pacing the floor. Then came the scratching, a faint but persistent noise, as if something was clawing at the walls from within the bowels of the house. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just the old pipes, or the wind outside. But as the noises persisted, a gnawing sense of unease settled over me. I found myself sitting up in bed, straining to hear through the oppressive quiet. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I tiptoed out of my room and crept down the narrow hallway, each step a creaking testament to the house's age. The source of the sounds seemed to be coming from the basement, the door standing slightly ajar, as if inviting me to uncover its secret. Hesitant but determined, I descended the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, a chill that seeped into my bones and made my skin prickle with dread. The noises had stopped, but an eerie silence took their place. A silence that felt alive, like a predator lurking just out of sight. As I reached the bottom, the faint light from above cast long shadows across the dusty floor. I hesitated at the threshold, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But before I could act, the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls, plunging the basement into darkness. Heart pounding, bumbled for the light switch. When the bulb finally flickered to life, my eyes fell upon the sight that would haunt me for nights to come. The word "Get Out" scrawled across the dusty floor as if etched by invisible hands. Every hair on my body stood on end. I backed away slowly, the urge to flee nearly overwhelming. But as I turned to ascend the stairs, I heard it again. A soft, almost inaudible whisper that seemed to come from the shadows themselves. A voice filled with a chilling malevolence that sent ice coursing through my veins. "You're not alone." My breath hitched, and I stumbled back, eyes wide, searching for the source of the voice. But there was nothing, only the oppressive darkness and the lingering echo of those haunting words. Desperate to escape the basement, I rushed up the stairs, heart thundering in my chest. The door yielded to my frantic push, swinging open with a reluctant groan. I slammed it shut behind me, leaning against the solid wood as if it could protect me from whatever lurked below. I stood there, breathless and shaken, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it a trick of the mind, a manifestation of my own fears? Or was there truly something sinister residing in this old house, waiting patiently in the shadows? That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake in bed, listening to the house settle around me, my mind replaying the events over and over. The message etched into the dust felt like a warning, a dark premonition of things to come. And as the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled into something far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. Despite the night's unsettling events, I awoke the next morning, determined to dismiss everything as an overactive imagination. I convinced myself it had all been a nightmare conjured by my mind and the house's eerie ambience. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. As I made my way downstairs, the air felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Margaret was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Her cheerful demeanor from the previous day was replaced by a strange silence, as if she knew more than she was letting on. "Good morning," said, her eyes briefly meeting mine before darting away, as if she could sense my unease. "I trust you slept well?" I hesitated, not sure how to respond. Should I tell her about the strange noises, about the ominous message in the basement? Or would she dismiss it, chalk it up to my imagination? "It was an interesting night," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "I heard some noises like footsteps and scratching. Do you have any idea what that might be?" Margaret paused, a flicker of something, fear, maybe, crossing her features. But then she shook her head, her smile tight. "This house is old. It makes noises sometimes. You get used to it." There was something in her voice that suggested she wasn't telling the whole truth, but I decided not to press further. Instead, I ate breakfast in silence, my mind replaying the events of the night. Later, as I went about my day, the feeling of being watched returned with a vengeance. Every time I entered a room, I couldn't shake the sensation that someone, or something, was observing me from the shadows. In the afternoon, while taking a break from work, I sat in the living room, trying to focus on a book. The sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting patterns on the floor. But my attention kept drifting to the portraits on the walls, the solemn faces of the house's former residents, their eyes following me no matter where I moved. And then, without warning, the temperature in the room plummeted. Chill seeped into my bones, more piercing than the coldest winter wind. My breath hung in the air like smoke, and the sensation of being watched intensified, as if the portraits themselves were judging me. I stood up, my heart racing, and walked over to the window. As I peered outside, something caught my eye. In the garden, partially hidden behind a tree, stood a shadowy figure. It was motionless, almost blending into the landscape. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound calm. The figure didn't respond, didn't move. I blinked, and just like that, it was gone, vanished as if it had never been there. A shiver ran down my spine, and I backed away from the window, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the light. But the gnawing unease refused to leave me, clinging to me like a second skin. That evening, as darkness fell once more, the house seemed to come alive with a sinister energy. Creaks and groans intensified, an unsettling symphony that played on my nerves. Determined not to let fear consume me, I settled in for the night. But as the hours passed, the disturbances began again. The footsteps, louder this time, as if someone were pacing right outside my door. I lay there, frozen in bed, straining to listen. The scratching noise returned, growing in intensity, until it felt like nails scraping against my sanity. I could almost sense the presence on the other side of the door, waiting for me to acknowledge it. In a moment of reckless bravery, or perhaps sheer desperation, I rose from the bed and flung open the door, hoping to catch whatever was tormenting me in the act. The hallway was empty, silent except for the frantic beating of my heart. But then, cold draft brushed past me, carrying with it the unmistakable scent, damp earth, as if the grave itself had exhaled. Before I could process what was happening, the lights began to flicker. Shadows danced across the walls, stretching and contorting into grotesque shapes. I could feel their eyes on me, see their twisted forms writhing in the dim light. In a panic, I stumbled back into my room, slamming the door shut and pressing my back against it as if it could keep whatever lurked outside at bay. But then, from the corner of the room, a soft whisper reached my ears. A voice, barely audible yet chilling in its clarity. "Help me." I turned, scanning the room for any sign of the source, but there was nothing, only empty air and the echo of that haunting plea. My mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of it all. The scratching, the footsteps, the shadowy figure, and now this voice. It was all connected. I was sure of it. But how? And why me? Desperate for answers, I remembered Margaret's cryptic warning about the basement. My heart pounded as I realized that the answers might lie within its depths, hidden beneath layers of dust and darkness. Resolving to uncover the truth, I knew I had to confront whatever was haunting this house. But as I steeled myself for what lay ahead, a single thought echoed in my mind. A warning, perhaps, or a prophecy of doom. "You're not alone." I shivered, knowing that whatever was in this house was aware of me, and I of it. The thin veil between our worlds had been breached, and there was no turning back now. As the clock ticked towards midnight, I prepared to face the unknown, my resolve hardened by the understanding that I was on the precipice of something far more terrifying than I had ever imagined. Little did I know, the true horror was just beginning. By the time midnight arrived, my nerves were on edge. The house seemed to hum with a malevolent energy, as if it knew my intention. Each creak of the floorboards, each whisper of the wind outside felt like a warning, urging me to turn back. But the desire for answers burned too fiercely within me to ignore. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and my wavering courage, I made my way down the dimly lit hallway toward the basement door. The air was thick with tension, and every shadow seemed to lean in closer, watching my every move. As I reached the door, my hand hovered over the doorknob, hesitating. My mind raced with 1,000 doubts, and for a brief moment I considered abandoning this quest. But then I remembered the chilling voice that had haunted my room earlier, a plea for help. My resolve hardened. I opened the door and it groaned as if protesting my intrusion. The stairway leading down into the basement was shrouded in darkness, a gaping maw that threatened to swallow me whole. The light from my flashlight barely cut through the inky blackness, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. Each step down felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in time with the creaks of the wooden stairs. The air grew colder, heavy with a palpable sense of dread. It was as if I had crossed into another world, one where the rules of reality no longer applied. Reaching the bottom, I hesitated at the threshold, flashlight beam sweeping across the cluttered expanse of the basement. Boxes and old furniture were piled haphazardly, shrouded in cobwebs and dust, graveyard of forgotten memories. And then I saw it, the source of the scratching. Faint outline on the far wall, partially obscured by a stack of old crates. As I approached, the scratching intensified, as if something behind the wall was desperate to break free. I swallowed hard, cold sweat trickling down my spine as I reached out to touch the wall. My fingers brushed against a section that felt different, softer, almost as if it were breathing. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, the scratching stopped. A chilling silence enveloped the basement, so profound that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in the emptiness. The air seemed to press in around me, suffocating in its intensity. And then it happened. A low, guttural growl erupted from behind the wall, a sound so primal it shook me to my core. I staggered back, eyes wide with terror, as the wall began to pulse and warp as if it were alive. The growling intensified, a symphony of malevolence that resonated through the very foundation of the house. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. The air vibrated with an energy that seemed to distort reality itself. Shadows twisted and contorted, writhing like living entities. Cacophony of whispers filled the air, an unintelligible chorus of despair, and then from the corner of my eye I saw it. Figure emerging from the darkness, wreathed in shadows. It was tall and gaunt, its form shifting and shimmering as if made of smoke. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, pinpoints of malice that seemed to pierce through my very soul. I froze, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my legs refused to obey. The figure advanced slowly, each step deliberate and purposeful, its gaze never leaving mine. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the relentless pounding of my heart. The figure paused, its head tilting slightly as if contemplating my question. And then it spoke, its voice a raspy echo that reverberated through the basement. "I am the keeper of secrets," hissed, words laced with a malevolent satisfaction. "And you, trespasser, have awakened the darkness that lies within." My mind raced, trying to comprehend the entity's words. Keeper of secrets? Darkness? What did it all mean? Questions swirled in my mind. The figure offered no answers, only the weight of gaze. As if sensing my confusion, the figure raised a hand, and the shadows around it began to writhe and twist, coalescing into nightmarish forms that seemed to defy reality. Faces appeared, twisted in agony, their eyes hollow and soulless. Desperation clawed at my sanity, and I stumbled backward, the flashlight slipping from my grasp and clattering to the floor. Darkness enveloped me, swallowing the basement in an impenetrable shroud. Blind and terrified, I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I fumbled for the light. My fingers finally found the flashlight, and with trembling hands, I switched it back on. The beam pierced the darkness, illuminating the basement once more. But the figure was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there. The shadows lay still, no longer twisted into grotesque forms. But the air remained charged with a malevolent presence, and the whispered chorus continued to echo in my mind, a reminder of the horrors I had witnessed. Desperate to escape, I backed away toward the stairs, never taking my eyes off the spot where the figure had stood. The shadows seemed to follow me, a silent reminder that I was not alone. As I reached the top of the stairs, I turned one last time, my heart heavy with dread. The basement lay silent, secrets hidden once more. But the memory of that encounter lingered, etched into my mind like a scar. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, my body trembling with a mix of fear and disbelief. Whatever had just happened, it was clear that the house held dark secrets, secrets that defied explanation. And as I stood there, trying to calm my racing heart, I realized that the line between reality and nightmare had blurred beyond recognition. I had ventured into the heart of darkness, and it had left its mark on me. I returned to my room, the weight of what I had witnessed pressing down on me. The walls seemed to close in, and the shadows danced in the corners of my vision. Constant reminder of the entity that lurked within the house. Sleep was elusive that night, my mind haunted by the specter of the figure and its cryptic words. The whispered chorus of the damned echoed in my thoughts, chilling refrain that refused to be silenced. And as I lay there, caught in the grip of fear, one thing became clear. The darkness was not confined to the basement. It was a part of the house itself, an ancient malevolence that had awakened to claim its next victim. I was trapped in a place where nightmares roamed free, and the line between the living and the dead blurred beyond comprehension. The house had become a prison of fear, and I was its unwilling captive. The night stretched on, a relentless tide of terror that refused to ebb. The darkness had taken root within me, and I knew that there would be no escape from the horrors that awaited me in the days to come. And in the silence of the night, a single thought echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of the encounter that had shattered my reality. You are not alone. Morning came slowly, the light seeping through the curtains like an unwelcome intruder. I hadn't slept a wink. The night's events had left me shaken, my mind plagued by images of the figure and its haunting words. Despite the fear that gnawed at my resolve, I knew I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Something was terribly wrong with this house. It was more than the creaks and shadows. It was something ancient, something malevolent. I spent the morning in a daze, the events of the previous night playing over and over in my mind. Margaret seemed to sense my unease. Her eyes lingered on me with a mixture of curiosity and something else. Pity, perhaps? Is everything all right? She asked, her voice carrying a weight that suggested she already knew the answer. I hesitated, my mind a swirl of conflicting emotions. Should I tell her? Would she even believe me? But the memory of the figure's words haunted me, and I found myself speaking before I could think twice. There was something in the basement, confessed, a voice barely above a whisper. Something, not human. Margaret's eyes widened ever so slightly, a flicker of fear crossing her features. She glanced around the room as if expecting the shadows to leap out at us. But then she composed herself, her expression smoothing into one of cautious neutrality. "This house is old," she said carefully. "It has its quirks, its peculiarity, but nothing that can't be explained." Her words rang hollow, a rehearsed line meant to placate rather than comfort. I wanted to press her for more information, but something in her demeanor told me it would be pointless. The truth, it seemed, was something I would have to uncover on my own. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to explore the house further. The basement had been a dark revelation, but I sensed that the true heart of the mystery lay elsewhere, somewhere even more foreboding. The attic was a place I had deliberately avoided since my arrival. Something about it seemed inherently wrong, as if it held secrets that were better left undisturbed. But now, with the weight of the night's encounter pressing down on me, I knew I had no choice. The attic door was at the end of a narrow hallway on the second floor. It was an unassuming door, painted the same color as the walls, but it seemed to radiate an ominous energy. As I reached for the doorknob, cold draft swept past me, carrying with it the scent of decay and neglect. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to turn back, but I pushed forward, the need for answers outweighing my fear. The door creaked open, revealing a set of stairs that led into darkness. I took a deep breath and ascended, each step creaking beneath my weight. The air grew colder, tinged with a musty odor that hinted at the attic's age and abandonment. Reaching the top, I paused, allowing my eyes to adjust to the dim light. The attic was a cavernous space, filled with forgotten relics of the past, old furniture draped in dusty sheets, boxes stacked haphazardly, and cobwebs hanging like veils from the rafters. But what caught my attention was the mirror. It stood in the center of the attic, an ornate frame that seemed out of place among the clutter. Its surface was coated in a thick layer of dust, but even so, I could sense its significance, a presence that drew me in with an almost magnetic pull. As I approached, the air around me seemed to thrum with energy, a low hum that resonated through my very bones. I hesitated, the memory of the figure's warning echoing in my mind. "You have awakened the darkness." But curiosity and a strange compulsion overrode my fear. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the mirror's surface, wiping away the dust to reveal the reflection beneath. What I saw chilled me to the core. It was me, or rather, a twisted version of me. My reflection grinned back with a malevolent leer, its eyes devoid of humanity. The room behind it was different, too, warped and distorted, as if viewed through a funhouse lens. I stumbled back, heart pounding, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. But the reflection didn't vanish. It lingered, watching me with a predatory gaze that sent shivers down my spine. And then it moved. The reflection raised a hand, gesturing toward something behind me. I turned, dread pooling in my stomach, expecting to see some horror emerging from the shadows. But there was nothing. Only the attic, silent and still. I whipped back around to face the mirror. The reflection was gone. The glass showed only my pale face, wide-eyed and breathless. A low chuckle filled the air, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls. It was a mocking sound, filled with a malice that set my nerves on edge. In a panic, I backed away from the mirror, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. What had I seen? Was it a hallucination or something more sinister? I was about to turn and flee when a faint glimmer caught my eye. Something shimmering in the corner of the attic. Curiosity warred with fear as I approached, the air growing colder with each step. There, nestled among the clutter, was an old diary, its cover worn and pages yellowed with age. I hesitated, a sense of foreboding washing over me. But the pull of the diary was irresistible, as if it held the answers I sought. With trembling hands, I picked it up, the leather binding cool against my skin. As I flipped through the pages, the words within revealed a chilling tale, a story of the house and the horrors that lay within its walls. The diary belonged to a previous occupant, a man who had been tormented by the same malevolent force that now haunted me. His entries were frantic, filled with descriptions of nightmarish visions and whispered warnings. "The darkness has claimed this house," he had written in one entry. "It feeds on fear, growing stronger with each soul it consumes. Beware the mirror, for it is a gateway to the other side." I felt a chill run through me, the realization settling like a lead weight in my stomach. The mirror wasn't just a reflection. It was a portal, a bridge between worlds, and the figure I had encountered was a guardian of sorts, keeper of the dark secrets that lay beyond. The attic seemed to close in around me, the shadows pressing in with a suffocating weight. I knew now that I was in grave danger, trapped in a house that was more alive than it had any right to be. The realization sent a jolt of fear through me. If I didn't act soon, I would become another victim, another soul consumed by the darkness. Clutching the diary, I made my way back to the stairs, my heart pounding with a newfound urgency. I needed to find a way to break the hold the house had over me, to escape the clutches of the malevolent force that sought to claim me. But as I descended the stairs, one thought echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the battle that lay ahead. You are not alone. With each step, I felt the weight of those words pressing down on me, a chilling reminder of the entity that lurked within the shadows. I knew then that the house wouldn't let me go easily. It had tasted my fear, and it was hungry for more. And as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I realized that the true horror was just beginning. The darkness had been awakened, and it would stop at nothing to claim me as its own. I spent the rest of the day preparing for the inevitable showdown with the malevolent force that had taken root in the house. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and determination, the diary's words echoing in my thoughts like a grim prophecy. The darkness has claimed this house, feeds on fear, growing stronger with each soul it consumes. The weight of those words hung heavy over me as I paced the creaky floorboards of the living room, feeling the house shift and breathe around me. The air was charged with an energy that made every hair on my body stand on end. I knew I couldn't just run away. Whatever evil had awakened here would follow me, relentless in its pursuit. No, I had to face it. I had to break the house's hold over me. Margaret watched me with an inscrutable expression, her eyes a mix of concern and something else I couldn't quite place, perhaps a resigned acceptance of what was to come. She had seen this all before, I realized. She was a caretaker of the house in more ways than one. "What are you planning to do?" she asked finally, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "I need to confront it," I replied, my voice steady even as a storm of emotions raged within me. "I have to end this." She nodded, faint glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "Be careful. The house doesn't give up its secrets easily. It has a way of changing people." With her words lingering in the air like a warning, I turned and made my way back toward the attic. I had spent too much time running from the darkness, too much time letting it control my every thought and action. Now it was time to confront whatever lurked in the shadows and find a way to end the torment. The journey up the stairs was a blur, my heart pounding in my chest as I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The air grew colder, thicker, as if the house itself was aware of my intentions and was determined to stop me. Felt as if I were wading through an invisible current, each step forward an act of defiance against the unseen forces at work. When I reached the attic door, I hesitated, a hand hovering over the doorknob. For a moment, I was filled with doubt. Was I truly ready to face the horrors within? Could I withstand the darkness that threatened to consume me? But the memory of the twisted reflection in the mirror, figure that had taunted me with its sinister grin, gave me the resolve I needed. I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. I pushed open the door and stepped into the attic, a dim light barely illuminating the vast space before me. Mirror stood in the center, waiting, a silent sentinel, guarding the secrets of the house. The air was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on me like a physical force. I approached the mirror slowly, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The glass seemed to shimmer and pulse, reflecting the room with a surreal distortion that set my nerves on edge. I could feel the darkness coiling around me, a living presence that watched my every move. Taking a deep breath, I reached out and touched the mirror's surface, feeling a shock of cold that jolted through my body. The world seemed to tilt, the air humming with a low, ominous vibration that reverberated through my bone. And then it happened. Reflection shifted, the glass warping and twisting as if alive. Figure appeared once more, emerging from the depths of the mirror like a specter summoned from the abyss. Its eyes burned with an unnatural light, and its grin was a rictus of malice. The attic around me faded, the walls dissolving into a swirling void of shadows and whispers. I stood alone with the figure, caught in a realm where the boundaries of reality and nightmare blurred into one. "You cannot escape," figure rasped, its voice a chilling echo that resonated through the air. "You have awakened the darkness, and it will consume you." Panic clawed at my mind, primal fear that threatened to overwhelm me. But deep within, a spark of defiance ignited. Determination to fight back against the darkness that sought to claim me. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head, its eyes narrowing as it studied me with an unsettling intensity. "You trespassed," replied, the words laced with a sinister amusement. "You dared to disturb the secrets of this house. But what are you?" Pressed, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is this place?" Figure chuckled, a low, mocking sound that echoed in the void. "I am the keeper of this domain," it said, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. "This house is my sanctuary, a haven for the forgotten and the damned." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The house was more than just a building. It was a prison for lost souls, a nexus of dark energy that thrived on fear and despair. The figure was its warden, a guardian of the malevolent forces that lay within. "I won't let you take me," I declared, my voice ringing with newfound determination. "I won't be another victim." Figure's grin widened, predatory gleam in its eyes. "Your resolve is admirable, futile." Hissed, the shadows closing in around me. "The darkness will consume you as it has consumed all who came before." The void seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the whispers growing louder, a cacophony of despair, threatened to drown out all reason. But I refused to yield, drawing upon every ounce of strength I had left. I took a step forward, the darkness parting before me like a curtain. Figure watched, its expression shifting from amusement to something else, something akin to curiosity. "You cannot defeat the darkness," it intoned, the words hanging in the air like a curse. "It is eternal, insatiable. But it is not invincible," countered, my voice unwavering. "There is always light, even in the deepest shadows." With those words, I focused on the mirror, willing the darkness to retreat. The air shimmered, the void trembling as the boundaries of reality began to reassert themselves. The figure snarled, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You dare challenge me?" Spat, its voice a tempest of rage. I stood my ground, my gaze locked with the entity's burning eyes. "I challenge you," I replied, my voice filled with a calm determination that surprised even me. The void trembled, the whispers fading into a distant murmur as the mirror began to glow with an ethereal light. Figure writhed, its form unraveling like smoke caught in a gale. "No," it howled, its voice a symphony of despair. "You cannot escape the darkness." But the light grew brighter, piercing through the shadows with a brilliance that defied description. The figure's form shattered, dissolving into a cascade of darkness that was drawn into the mirror's depths. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The attic reappeared around me, the air clear and still, the oppressive weight of the darkness lifted. The mirror stood silent, its surface reflecting only my own bewildered face. I took a shaky breath, my mind struggling to comprehend what had just transpired. The malevolent force had been banished, its hold over the house broken. I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. I knew I would never be the same, forever marked by the encounter with the entity that had lurked within the shadows. The house, once a place of fear and dread, now seemed to exhale a long-held breath. The malevolence that had tainted it, now gone. I made my way back down the stairs, each step a reminder of the battle I had fought. Margaret stood at the bottom, her expression one of awe and relief. "You did it," she said softly, her eyes searching mine for any sign of the darkness that had plagued me. "You faced the house and won." I nodded, a sense of weary triumph settling over me. "The house is free," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But the memories will linger." Margaret offered a faint smile, a look of understanding passing between us. "The house will heal as will you," she said. "It may take time, but the light has returned." I knew she was right. The scars of the encounter would remain, a reminder of the battle I had fought and the darkness I had faced. The house, once a place of nightmares, was now a part of me, its secrets forever etched in my mind. As I stepped outside, the sun bathed the landscape in a warm glow, the world seeming to breathe a sigh of relief. The oppressive weight of the darkness was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and renewal. The house stood behind me, silent and still, its secrets buried deep within its walls. And as I walked away, a sense of closure washed over me, a feeling that I had confronted my fears and emerged stronger for it. But as the house faded into the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness still lingered, waiting for another soul to awaken it. The shadows, though diminished, would always remain, testament to the unseen forces that lurk in the corners of our world. And I knew, deep down, that the battle with the darkness was far from over. The light may have triumphed for now, but the shadows would always be watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. As I left the house behind, the echoes of the past whispered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lay just beyond the veil of reality, a reminder that the darkness is never truly gone. For in every shadow, a story waits to be told. A story of fear, courage, and of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. And in that struggle, we find the true essence of our humanity. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed these chilling stories as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up to keep the terror coming. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring even more spine-tingling content your way. Before you go, don't forget to check out the video playing on the screen. It's packed with more unsettling tales and eerie experiences that you won't want to miss. If you have any frightening stories of your own or suggestions for future content, drop them in the comments below. Stay tuned for more haunting adventures. Until next time, sleep tight. Decant.